Hello, all my crafty people out there. It is time for our weekly project. And I have thrifted something interesting that I think you'll like. First of all, my name is Stephanie, and I upcycle clothing, usually thrifted items from my local stores. And we make either new clothing or accessories. Anyway, back to what I thrifted. And this is a flat sheet for a double bed, and it is definitely vintage. It is something called a Fashion Manor. I believe Penny's used to put it out eons ago, and it is it pea green or is it the traditional avocado? I'm thinking it's closer to avocado, or was at one time. Anyway, what we're going to do with this, since there's a lot of fabric here, which, by the way, is great to save and use for backing quilts, which I'm not a professional at, but I have used sheets for that process, or anything like what we're going to do today that just needs a lot of fabric. So, cheap way. I think this probably cost me $3 at American Thrift. And I bought this pattern, and I will link it in the bottom of the description. It's called, is this Mila or Mila? Not sure. Milla. It was an Etsy designer that had this out there, and it's going to be hard for you to see, but it's a shirt and or two different length dresses. And it's really what the standard is right now, the little puffy sleeves, a little square neckline, or a little squared off bodice. So I think we're going to give this a try. It came in PDF, or I bought it and I downloaded it. So I've already figured out, I think, how to cut it out. I'll show you how it goes. And then we will be making, I believe, what they're calling the mid dress with the minimal puff sleeve. I'm not going for super puff. I'm going for minimal puff. And just some elastic in the puffy sleeves. So, and I think I'm going to do full length sleeves. So all that, we're just going to roll with it. And if you like this kind of content, or you want to check it out, see if we can get this done, like, subscribe, let me know what you think, and I'll catch y'all at the table. Okay. I've got all of our pattern cut out. So now I'm trying to figure out exactly how I'm going to cut it out of this sheet. Now, the sheet is 81 inches up at the top from side to side, and 105 or 104 inches down. I think it's a standard, what they call double or full size, however you want to look at it. So what I've done, and this is my idea, I have folded it in half right here. Yeah, there's a little paint stain there, but I don't care. I have folded it in half, and then I folded each side back on it. So it looks like that. That's the middle, and these are the two sides, and I folded them back towards the middle to kind of give me an accordion fold. So here's two folds over here on the edge, essentially. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to have folds on one side so I could cut the skirt, because I have to have two of the skirt. And the skirt is huge, because I'm doing the dress, what they call the midi dress, which on me will be a maxi, but we aren't going there. And it's just a little bit big for this width. However, I feel like this might be a little full for me. So I am willing to lose a couple of inches on the inside here, on the fold side, in order to keep our angle here that we need to attach to the bodice and to the sleeve. Now, it won't be quite as full. It'll be, like I said, maybe 5 inches. I don't even know. Yeah, 5 inches between the two pieces off. So it won't be that bad. But what we will be able to do is we will be able to keep our the sheet cuff or hem at the top. It's a wide hem, you know, the one that would be up at your pillowcases. And we're going to keep that as our hem because I really like it. I like the width of it. Okay, just a second to talk about these ties. They're 1 3/8 by 17.5, and you're supposed to fold them in half and sew down the side. Now the seam allowance that they've allowed for is a 3/8 inch seam. If you did that, you wouldn't have much strap left. So I did a 1/2 inch, and I mean a 1/4 inch. Sorry, 1/4 inch. But even with a 1/4 inch, they're very thin. And when you turn them, although with a safety pin it's pretty easy to turn them, they are darn near impossible to sew over the ends because there's so little fabric. Even if you try to use a starter piece and an end piece, whatever, they're a nightmare to try and put a top stitch on these little teeny tiny tips. So I went with my good old fashioned way of doing things. I did add an 1/8 of an inch to these. So these are 1.5 by 17.5. I folded them in half, put a 1/4 inch serge down the side, and I 1/4 inch serged the top as well. And then I took a dowel. It's kind of like you could use a what am I thinking? Not a skewer, but like a chopstick. And you just have to push in the end and push it all the way through. It's not easy, but it does give you a nice cleaner, much cleaner end. And you don't have to worry about trying to top stitch over it. So do it however you prefer. This is the way I prefer to do it. And of course I'm going to press these so they're not so round looking. But I think that this works better for me if I sew all the way up the edge and over the corner, then turn it. All right, all of our pieces are cut out, and these are my 2 little ties over here. This is the back of the bodice, or the blouse, and it looks like that. And this is the front here, and it's got the V in it for the front. Like this. Oops. All right. So what we're going to do, first thing we're going to do is we're going to sew. Thank goodness these are the same inside and out. There's not a right side and a wrong side on this. I like it that when I have fabric like that. So what we're going to do first is we're going to draw these notches. And I didn't make notches. I like to draw them on this particular type of pattern. And we're going to notch here, which is the model B, and notch here, which is the model B. We're making the model B only in the aspect of the sleeves. We're not making big full sleeves. We're making a little bit more minimal sleeve. And then we're also, we're not making a cuff on the sleeve though. We're going to just put elastic at the end because that's the way I like mine. So first thing we got to do is take both of these apart and sew them at the shoulder seams. Okay, I serged the shoulder seams, both of them. Working with the sergers faster and feels more secure. So, I mean, not that straight stitching is not secure, but we're going to take both of these and put them right sides together. Like so. And then we're going to go over and sew the neckline. So once we get them together, I'm going to make sure our shoulder, I don't know what's going on, shoulder seams match. And we will alternate the way they fold together. Just like you would if you were, putting a quilt together. You alternate your seams. And let's see, I push that one to the back. So push this one to the front. Then we'll just sew a 3/8 inch seam all the way around the neck. Now I am obviously going to use the sewing machine for this process because I've got that V to contend with. Serger is not necessarily something you can just zip around all the edges with or zip around into the little nooks and crannies with. So we're going to go sew all the way around the neck, including the V, 3/8 inch seam allowance. And then we'll be able to do is turn it inside out. And again, that seam will be completely encased, so we don't have to worry about it. And we can top stitch over it if we need to. Oh, and when I do this, when I sew these together, let me go ahead and pin. I'm going to pin my my little ties in here. And I'm going to pin them about the seam allowance away from the top so they don't get caught in the corner there. Okay, got the neckline all sewn in, and the only thing we really got to do now is kind of clip it up. So I've clipped the point here almost to the stitching, not quite, about a 1/16 of an inch away from the stitching. I've clipped the corners off of the only corners there are on the neck, these two right here that meet the V. And then I'm going to take my pinking shears and I'm going to clip around the edges to give all the curves their curvability. That sounded so ridiculous. Okay, all the edges have been clipped. It's still wrong side out. And we're going to take one of the pieces, it doesn't matter which one, and we're going to shove them into the neck hole. So we're going to take the other side down here and shove it in the neck hole as well. And all that's doing is giving us an opportunity to turn it out. So now we have a turned out neckline. Okay, now we have our two sleeves to contend with. These bad boys are pretty big. And like I said, this is the cut down version. I didn't use the full on puff. So since this is quote model B, this is the sleeve with the fuzz. And there's a little spot right there. I don't care. I'll be fine with that. We'll make this the right side. And what I've done is I've marked the center and I've marked the two notch marks that the pattern called for. And the only thing we're going to have to gather is the material between these two notches. If we were using the full sleeve, the A model, we would be gathering all the way down and there'd be a lot more sleeve here, honestly. So probably another, I don't know, maybe another 10 inches. It's really big. I mean, as big as is, as you can see. Oh, and that's just water from the iron. It'll dry. So let me go put 2 gathering stitches. Yes, I'm going to use 2. We're looking for some really cool perfection here. Well, as close as I get to perfect. So I'm going to put 2 gathering stitches between here and here, which means I'm going to use probably a 3.5 size length in my stitch, so I've got plenty of room to pull and it'll pull easy. You always pull from the bottom. Your bobbin thread is the thread you pull, and you try to get as close to the edge with your 2 seams because you want to put them as far into the seam allowance as you can. But of course, once you pin this down and you seam it down, you should be able to pull that stitch if you don't get it within the seam line. So don't worry too much about that. I'll tell you what I did. I went over there and used a 3.5 length on my bobbin, on my thread, my stitching. And I used a light color, you can't see it, and there's a dark color on my bobbin thread. It's good to have 2 different color threads, then you'll know which one you're pulling, because we're always pulling the bobbin thread. And I've run the 2 gathering stitches right beside each other for this length between these 2 notches. And all I need to do is pull that bobbin thread and adjust that gather as I go. And that's going to give me the ability to make sure that it fits in the spot, which we've already marked the spot, the notches on our bodice. And we know where the center seam is. It'll go with the seam on the shoulder seam. I can't talk tonight. I don't know what's going on. So we're just going to gradually pull this, and then once we pull it, we'll go and size it up against the bodice. And that will give us an idea of how much we need to lessen that. So let's just look at it for giggle's sake. All right. Here's the side of my bodice. This is the armhole. And let's just look at this real quick. All right. If we find the center mark, which is right here, and we pin it to the shoulder seam, making sure our seams still go the same way they did at the neckline. Then we know we've got to meet this line right here. This is the other notch, so I need to take that up some more. So just pull my threads out a little bit. I'll push this up a little more. I'm going to try and get your gathers even. That's tricky. It takes a little practice, but there's no rush. You know, don't rush your designs. Don't rush your sewing. Enjoy it. Take your time. Meet your notches. And see, I can loosen that up a little. And then that pretty much meets my gathers. But we're going to stitch from the end of the bodice, or the front of the bodice end, to the back of the bodice hem, like that. And that is going to go on both sides, and that will create our sleeve and our armhole. Just wanted to let you see this pin down before I go and sew the first arm. This is the bodice, and this is the sleeve back here, and I've pinned it all the way from one end to the other, and cinched up our gathering area here on the sleeve to make sure that it fit. And essentially this is what it's going to look like. You can have your bodice, then you have your sleeve. Okay, we got our bodice and our sleeves together. And I went ahead and serged down that seam from the back of the bodice to the front of the bodice, so it's nice and clean. And now we're going to put the skirt on. And the bodice does this right here, where it kind of folds out like this. And it has these 2 points. This is where the skirt is actually going to end. So part of the sleeve will be encompassed in the skirt process from the front and the back. And this is what the skirt looks like as far as the fabric goes. It's 2 very large pieces of fabric that have these pieces up here. The way they're shaped up here, what will happen is this will meet the front of the bodice, and then this part will be the part that continues onto the sleeve. And we're going to have to gather from this end all the way around to the other end. So these, both of the top pieces of these two pieces of skirt will have to be completely gathered. And the only saving grace to this is we left the original hem from the sheet for our hem, so we won't have to hem it. It's about the only saving grace I got. So let me go put big gathering stitches, or not big, but long gathering stitches up the top of both of these skirt panels. Okay, I have put the skirt on to the bodice and the part of the sleeve that it goes on to, both sides of the skirt, and I went ahead and I serged over the seam as well. This is it inside out. So what we have left to do is to go from the hem of the sleeve, which I did put a serge line on this sleeve end because it'll make it easier when we want to just turn it over for our casing, for our elastic. But anyway, we're going to go from the hem of the sleeve all the way down the sleeve and all the way down the skirt and make that full side seam that goes from one end to the other, a lot like our peasant dresses or shirts or blouses or whatever. So from one end to the other, I'm going to go sew it on the machine first, then I'm going to serge it, and then all we'll have left is the elastic casing and the elastic for our sleeves. Okay, the last thing we got to do is put the elastic in the sleeves. And what I've decided to do is I'm going to turn under the serge line that I made, which was about, it's not even 3/8 of an inch, it's probably more like a 1/4 inch. And I'm ironing those, and then I'm going to turn it up probably a 1/2 inch. I only have 1/4 inch elastic. I mean, I have more, but I'm using 1/4 inch elastic. So I don't need a huge casing, but I think a 1/2 inch will be fine. More than enough. And that'll give me room to stitch and still leave plenty of room for the 1/4 inch elastic. I've made the casing on the arm sleeves. I just turned it over about a 1/2 inch. Along with the turning under the 3/8 inch or whatever of serge line. Left myself a little opening over here underneath the sleeve, underneath the hem there, or the seam, the underarm seam. And I'm just going to run our elastic through, just pinch and pull. Hold on to your end down here, or you will regret that. Okay, everybody. This is what it has turned out to be so far, which in all honesty, I like the full length, but I have an idea to give it a little more character and take up maybe the length to about mid-calf, more like a T-length kind of length. So in order to do that, I think we're going to put in some growth pleats or growth tucks. Now, honestly, I'm obviously not growing anymore, so I won't be taking them out. But I think it'll add a nice embellishment to the end down here. And like I said, take up some of the slack and make it just a little shorter. I think it'll be really cute to wear with boots. Now, if you like this length, hey, I do. I would wear it like this, no problem. But I just want to add a little more. So let's finish it up with some growth pleats. Try it on for the final time and see what we get. Okay, I'm going to try to explain how I'm putting these growth pleats in, or tucks. I've always called them pleats. I don't know. I have turned the dress inside out, and I have folded my hem up towards the waistline. And I took my hemming ruler, and I have between the line that is seaming my hemline and the edge of this fold, there's 4.5 inches. The reason I've done that is I want to take up 6 inches overall from the length. And I think that if I put 3 growth plates or pleats into the dress, each of them being 2 inches in total, then I can get that 6 inches pretty easily and add 3 pleats that'll make it look, more embellished. So, again, this is 4.5 inches from this seam line, but you could measure from the bottom of your hemline however you want. But you want to make sure that you've got enough room to make your pleat. So I'm going to sew 1 inch down from this fold line. And then when it folds over, it'll fold over 1 inch. So I've got to think that through. And then I want to have space between the hem and the end of that pleat. So I've got about 2.5 inches. So 2.5 inches here, 1 inch that's going to be taken up with the fold coming over, and then the fold itself. And then the only thing that's going to be taken up lengthwise, though, is the fold, which 1 inch on each side. Obviously, it's going to be a 2-inch fold. So 3 times 2 is 6, and that should give me my 6 inches if I make 3 pleats that are 2 inches in total each. So we're going to do a 1 inch seam away from the fold. And the easiest way for me to do that, and this is just my thought process, which it might not be right, is I use some good old painter's tape and put it across my machine arm where I want that 1 inch mark to be, because it's kind of hard to follow these little gauges unless it's really clear and white or whatever. But this way I can run that fold right along that piece of tape and know that I've got the 1 inch mark. So I'm going to run this around, and then we'll repeat for the second pleat and the third pleat. The only thing that we'll have to take into account is how much space we want between the pleats. That, I think, needs to be even and the same. Okay, I wanted to give you just a little bit closer up view. This is our last pleat. Well, here, we've got it turned inside out. And we're folding up the hemline just like we did the first time. But of course, now we've got this additional pleat that we put in, the first pleat we put in. And I want these pleats to be 1 inch apart. And from the fold, you sew in 1 inch like we did with this one. And then when it folds over, it takes up 1 inch. So 1, 2, 3, we have to have 3 inches between the last pleat, the seam on the last pleat, and the next fold. So you just kind of work with it. Get your 3, or like I said, this is up to you. You can make it as far apart, close to. Some people will even do like a variance. It's a little more challenging math-wise, but like you'd put 1 inch between the first two, 2 inches between the second, 3 inches between the next one, and kind of give it a even more flair, I guess, for lack of a better word. So I am measuring to make sure I've got 3 inches between this last pleat, the seam on that last pleat, and the fold line. Okay, everybody. That was it. 3 growth tucks, growth pleats, whatever you want to call them. 2 inches worth, so 1 inch fold. And it took it up to the perfect height. I'm super excited. And tomorrow is the last warm day we'll have for a while because it's going to rain. So I'm wearing this to work. If you like this kind of content, or if you enjoyed watching this, I'm sorry it was probably a little long because I had to add the pleats, but like, subscribe, let me know what you think, And as always, if you got a better idea of how to do something, let me know. I'm more than happy to give it a try. So I will catch y'all on the flip side of our next project.